And then fourth, we are told that Hezekiah consistently obeyed the Lord. Now this is the upper story of the house of no compromise. It's built on the foundation of trusting faith. The believer must then build a life of holding fast and then following ever so close. And then the next level must be daily obedience. For you see, the trust, the cleaving, and the following are not worth much at all if it's not followed by obedience. It's like the hymn that we sang, trust and obey. They go together. There is no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust in Him. Hezekiah built his life of no compromise on his decision of 100% love and devotion and dependence on the Lord, to trust Him with all of his heart, to hold fast to the Lord and not cease following after, to keep the commands that He had given to Moses. The name Hezekiah means Yahweh strengthens. There is no question in my mind that when Hezekiah made the decision of his life, God strengthened him in that determination to do what was right in the sight of the Lord. And as a result, God said concerning him, there is no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. Well, we know that actions speak of what the heart believes, and so Hezekiah's 100% devotion is seen first in his merciless dealing with idolatry in the land. Just as we absolutely must deal mercilessly in dealing with the sin and idolatry in our lives, there must be no compromises. And so he cut down and smashed and broke into pieces the idols, even the bronze snake that Moses had made because they had begun to bow down to it, making it Nehushtan, just a piece of scrap metal. There were no more statues to bow down to. There were no more high places to worship other gods. He broke away from King Assyria, refusing to bow his knee or pay homage to any king except his king, Jehovah God. And then we are moved into 2 Chronicles chapter 29, and we learn that he cleansed the temple and he sanctified the priests. How important! He opened the doors of the temple, it says, and repaired those gates, those doors. You see, he understood that God had established the temple in its worship, and it was to be the heart of the Jewish nation. And if that was wrong, everything else would be wrong. And that is the same way in our lives. When our worship with the Lord is not there, if it doesn't take number one place, and everything else in our lives is wrong. He called, it says, for the offering of the sin sacrifices to the Lord, and he invited all of God's people from Israel to all the way through Judah. And as a result, many left Israel before the Assyrian invasion and were not taken captive by them. And then last, he consecrated the temple and returned the people back to the Lord. If you have time this week, I encourage you to continue in 2 Chronicles there. We only touched a small portion of what Hezekiah did. You might want to read on. The consequence of a life of no compromise, marvelous consequences. The Lord was with him. Wherever he went, the Lord went with him. I just see that as an amazing picture. God walking with you hand in hand, step by step. The Lord blessed him. It says that he was successful in whatever he undertook. And if you read more about King Hezekiah, you will understand the amazing projects and all that he accomplished. It tells us in the war he had only victories over the Philistines. And then the Lord used him to preserve his word. He wants to use you to preserve his word. Hezekiah actually put in his, God put in his heart to arrange and transcribe Old Testament scriptures, and he even wrote some Psalms. And at the end of many of the Old Testament books, there are 3 capital letters that no transcriber has omitted. They are the letters H, Z, K. As Hezekiah's scribes completed the transcribing of these books, Hezekiah would then inspect them then add his royal signature. So here's God using Hezekiah to preserve the sacred scriptures as well as some of the notable psalms for us today. We are reminded that when one worships worthless idols, one becomes worthless. But when one worships the worthy God, the one and true living God, then that life is of great worth and great value. So, we have all considered the act of all-out compromise and the art of no compromise, so let's conclude with the attack of compromise by the enemy. Well, you know, we know that godly living does not guarantee that we won't have problems. Bummer. Actually, I would say that living a godly life guarantees us that we will have an all-out attack from the enemy, and that is exactly what happened to King Hezekiah. The first attack that took place in the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign by the king of Assyria, we are told that he captured all of the fortified cities. This is over 40 cities that he captured and was heading for Jerusalem. And we find that King Hezekiah, who had built his life on the art of no compromise, compromised. You know, in the classroom of life, we don't know where we truly stand until we have a test. And then reality hits us between the eyes. In this test from God and temptation from Satan, Hezekiah found out that he was far from perfect. God had much to teach him on the wiles and the work of the enemy and the cost of compromise. And so in the first attack by the enemy, Hezekiah failed. His grade is an F. Assyria, he attempted to turn Assyria away from attacking Jerusalem, and he did it in two ways. He apologized to the enemy. That breaks, I hate to even say that. He apologized to the enemy. He says, I have done wrong. Don't you hate that? I hate that. And then he appeased the enemy. He said, withdraw from me and I will pay you whatever you demand. And Hezekiah paid the king of Assyria all the silver that was found from the temple of the Lord and in the treasures of the royal palace, even stripping off the gold that he had put on the doors of the temple. Tragically, Hezekiah thought, just like we do in our lapse of faith, that a little giving in is okay. You know, appease the enemy and he will flee. No. James chapter 4 verse 7 says, submit yourself to God and resist the devil and he will flee. Hezekiah learned, just like we have, that when you appease the enemy, you are actually opening the door for him to come in like a flood. Compromising with the enemy will never give you victory. Victory only comes when you oppose the enemy. The second attack of compromise, well, that was even more voracious. King Sennacherib sent his Secretary of State, Hillary, and just wanted to make sure you're still with me, and his field commander and a large army to Jerusalem. And King Hezekiah's top 3 men had a summit meeting at a designated place by the wall of Jerusalem, so that all the people could hear and witness this attack. Wow. Setting them up. The enemy was not unique in his attack, for he attacks us the same way, so we have much to learn from this. It is always an attack against your faith. It was an attack against Hezekiah's faith and the children of Judah. And he begins by doing that by calling the king of Assyria the great king, because he wants to instill fear in their hearts. So the first question challenged their confidence with the purpose of bringing discouragement. And the question, on what are you basing your confidence? It cannot be your military. You may say you have strategy and military strength, but those are empty words.